Okay. So, दोस्तों, challenges to secular historiography पे आज बातचीत हो रही है और प्रोफेसर डी.एन. झा हम सब के बहुत ही रिस्पेक्टेड और माने हुए टीचर थे. मैं JNU में पढ़ी इसलिए उनसे नहीं मैं डायरेक्टली पढ़ पाई, लेकिन आई वुड लाइक टू एक्सप्रेस हियर माय ग्रैटिट्यूड to him for giving me the job that I got with great difficulty in Delhi College of Arts and Commerce many years ago. And and after that also, for a long time we had a very, very good relationship. He was always coming to JNU and taking part in many intellectual activities. He was a dear friend, I would say, though of course there was a huge difference in age. So Smita has talked about the aspects to do with teaching. No, I'm good. Rezavi Saab, Nadeem has talked about medieval historiography and spelt out, I thought very importantly, the issues, the concepts, secular historiography, and specifically within the ambit of medieval historiography. My presentation today here is a very specific one, very small focus, I would say, on the challenges to secular historiography which are posed by the so-called rewriting of history, and the example I'm taking is the textbooks, the NCERT textbooks. So please do bear with me. As my teacher, Professor Romila Thapar, has pointed out, secular historiography is not only about countering communal history writing, it is about rational, evidence-based inquiry and research-oriented approaches towards uncovering secular and shared histories. This is almost a quotation from her, and I think she makes a very important second point, which is that secular in this sense is fundamentally related to social justice and equity. Many others would bring in the concept of democracy. We often use that along with secular. But it's very important to know that we are not talking only here about how do we counter communal history writing. Okay? That, I think, the Bipin Chandra, Harbans Mukhya, that earlier booklet, Communalization of Education, which Mridula and Aditya had put together, and many other writings have done. This is more about, I see it as the assault on secular historiography. Where does it come from? So the challenges are manifold. They begin, as we know, with the denigration of secular historiography and secular historians in order to prepare the ground for replacing the textbooks by their own distorted history. You might remember from the 1970s itself, the attack on the earlier textbooks, the first textbooks, and worst of all, how Murli Manohar Joshi and others had castigated these very senior eminent historians as intellectual terrorists. So I'm taking up as the main example the NCERT textbooks, and within them I'm focusing on the deletions of the discussions on Gandhi's assassination. There is a consistency in this, which is very important politically. Next point is, it's very important for us to recognize the colonial basis of communal historiography, especially the Aryan race theory, the two-nation theory. We know it goes back to the earlier period. Hence, when we are challenged by communal historiography, colonial historiography is also challenging secular historiography. This is very important. And I would say, though I'm not going to go into that, I had in my presidential address to the Modern India section of the History Congress in Kerala some years ago, and it was published in History Congress Proceedings. I had, under the title of Genealogies of the Anti-Secular, I had taken up the very, the almost similarity that there was between, in terms of their origins and their worldviews, alarmingly between Cambridge historiography, subaltern historiography, and also a kind of left historiography. And here I'm talking about Perry Anderson in Indian ideology. So when we talk about the challenge to secular historiography, Gyanendra Pandey is as scathing about secular historiography as, say, any communal historian. It's very important to see where the challenge is coming from, though here I will not be able to take up. And last, of course, but not the least, the challenge is coming from the domain of public political discourse and social media, where vilification of the national leaders is extreme and growing. Now, just to go back a bit, we know that in April 2023, NCERT announced a slew of deletions in history textbooks, but we need to recognize that this goes back almost 40 years to the mid-70s. The government called for the withdrawal of textbooks during the Janta period. And these were the textbooks written by Ramila Thapar, Bipin Chandra, Satish Chandra. And again, let's not forget the motivation behind these textbooks. They were written on the recommendation of the National Integration Council to correct the colonial and communal bias in history books. There was a clear agenda behind it. As Nadeem told us, it was also that they explained things very well, but this aspect was very strong. So during the 1999-2005 period, you have the RSS ideological agenda in education pursued fully. It's not an accident that Murli Manohar Joshi, one of their main leaders, was made the education minister. History textbooks were revised, in quotations, removed, and new ones by RSS-minded historians were brought in. So when RSS-minded historians wrote these textbooks in 2002, Hari Om, who was the historian who wrote the book for contemporary India for class 10, there was, you will not imagine this, there was, when I say silent on Gandhi's assassination, I mean that there was not a word on Gandhi's assassination. And when there was a political furor, then the book was reprinted with a single sentence added. And what was the sentence? The sentence was, Gandhiji's efforts to bring peace and harmony in society came to a sudden and tragic end due to his assassination by Nathuram Godse on January 30th in Delhi while he was in way to attend a prayer meeting. Nothing about who Godse was, that he had anything to do with RSS, Hindu Mahasabha, that he reflected any kind of politics. There was no reference to that. And of course to the fact that how important this crime of the assassination was. I haven't quoted the whole thing here, but Nehru puts it very well when he says that there were two blows which the independent Indian state suffered. One was partition and the other was Gandhi's assassination. He puts them at par. I can see Niladri right at the back. These are the books that Niladri and others had put forward, the secular textbooks. We may have our problems with some of the perspectives there, but that's another matter. We've always steadfastly supported them and stood up for them. So in 2014, when the NDA, with the BJP as its main constituent, comes up, in 2018, Nadeem just talked about the committees which were set up. A modified plan came up, and under this umbrella or under the excuse that we're going to reduce the burden on students And 20% of this was done. So this is just a collage of that. Here's where the argument comes in. Javadekar, the Human Resources Minister, very clearly says that henceforth Indian history would correspond to India's glorious past, quote unquote. So that is very clearly the umbrella agenda. And as you know, but I'm not going into it, and this is something which is alarming the scientists also, that even science and other subjects are coming in this, because something known as Vedic science, quote unquote, is being brought in there also in these textbooks. Now 2019, the BJP, as you know, had no restraint on them. They had a majority on their own. So now you have top ideologues of the BJP and the RSS being associated with the reports and the critiques which come forward. The Public Policy Research Center, then you have the Rajya Sabha Committee, chaired by Vinay Sahasrabuddhe. You recognize his name. They were associated with this. So it was at the top level that this was happening. The NCERT comes out with, in April 2023, announces this so-called revised syllabus. Revised syllabus simply means deletions, etc. Now, you might remember these very dramatic headlines in the Indian Express at that point of time which came out. And the NCERT director, in an interview with News 14, he claimed that a few useless sections have been removed. We are only rationalizing the content and reducing the burden. He even used the word faltu. That's, sections have been removed. Kuch faltu the unko humne hata diya. Thank you. Other deletions, you can look at the left side. So you can see how wide it is, what was removed, from challenges of democracy to caste oppression. I'm only mentioning caste oppression, drawing your attention to that in some detail, that caste oppression is deleted very clearly. One can see the politics in this, because this would go against the rosy picture of that glorified ancient past which is painted in Hindu communal history. So it's dropped from the syllabus of the ancient Indian history, which is standardized, and here I'm bringing in the UGC. And this point I'm grateful to Professor Irfan Habib. It's one of the things that Nadeem had mentioned in those articles that he had brought out, that it says that in this bedeviled Muslim period, then this practice comes as a way of protecting Hindus, right? So please go on. In this next section, I'm focusing on the deletions on the issue of Gandhi's assassination. 2023 in the textbooks, it was 3 points had been made, that Gandhi's view was given that India will be destroyed if it becomes a country only for Hindus. Secondly, it was mentioned that it was Gandhi's pursuit of Hindu-Muslim unity that had provoked the Hindu extremists, so much so that they then went ahead to assassinate Gandhi. And last but not least, it was mentioned that the government, after Gandhi's murder, had cracked down on the RSS and the Hindu Mahasabha at that time, and that they were banned. And it also said very clearly these organizations were spreading communal hatred. So it was, these points were made. The politics of the assassination, as Ashish Nandi calls it in the famous article, was very clearly set out in these books. So this is dropped, just simply dropped. And what is it replaced by? Isn't it amazing? One line. At his Delhi prayer meeting on the evening of 30th January, Gandhiji was shot dead by a young man. The assassin who surrendered afterwards was Nathuram Godse. So this part is just my little thing, put little sarcastically. Merely a young man. It could be any of you guys out here. And obviously he's a very virtuous young man. Why is he virtuous? Because he did not escape. He did the right thing. He surrendered. Really, So anyway, the role of Hindu communal forces in the assassination continued to be denied. And this, interestingly, friends, is something which the RSS has been doing right from word go. Within 2 days of, or 1 day of Gandhi's assassination, on 1st February 1948, the Sangh Chalak of the RSS had announced, it's on the newspapers, he said the alleged assassin of Gandhi was never connected in any way with the RSS. And you know they continue to deny it even till today, making this farcical kind of distinction between Hindu Mahasabha and RSS. Well, this is just mentioning that what I'm presenting here is coming out of my book forthcoming on Gandhi's last years, and that I was able to get this, signed by Nathuram Godse, a very rare copy of this, which has all the testimonies, all the statements which were made and signed there in a 6-volume proceedings at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. This again is from the archives here. These are statements which are made by Godse, right? Statement of the accused, as you can see. And from many sources, it's very clear that Godse himself never denies his links with the RSS. And friends, many of you are familiar with the Frontline piece many years ago, where the interview was there, and where with Advani and then Gopal Gandhi also made it very clear, his brother, that they all grew up in the RSS. So I'm not going into it here. I've written a whole paper on this, which Rajan has published in Social Scientist in, I think, 2 issues before this. There was an issue which came out on commemorating Gandhi's assassination, or just 2 issues ago. So next step, what is done after delinking Godse from the RSS, this is what you will find today. Many books coming out which are eulogizing Godse. I haven't written this here. Now there are temples to him in Meerut, in Gwalior, many other places. Pragya Thakur, who was a BJP MP from Gwalior, I think, right? Right, Bhopal. She called him she called Godse a Deshbhakt. And yet, she was chastised, so-called, by Modi, but her Lok Sabha seat wasn't taken away from her. She contested and won. So Gandhi, this is what I'm calling a complete inversion of reality. So Gandhi is now the Asur. He is the demon. And Godse has become the Shaheed, the martyr. If you go on 30th January 1948 and on social media, you will find more hits on Godse and praising him than people who are eulogizing the Mahatma or commemorating that. It's shocking, but it's true. Savarkar's portrait was unveiled in Parliament. Shocking, but you have Abul Kalam and all others who are there. This is one of the most shocking things that you might have seen, this image. This is the lady in Aligarh, Pooja Shakun. She's a kind of general secretary of the BJP, and this is the effigy of Gandhi. And if you recall, she's holding this gun in her hand, and there's this tomato sauce type of, filmy Hindi film style, that blood oozing out of Gandhi. It's not coming out very clear, but over here, but it made headlines, It was completely shocking. What's important, friends, is that this critique of textbooks is not limited to some communal historians or some communal ideologues alone. Public statements, shockingly, coming from the Prime Minister, from the Home Minister, Amit Shah, and this, of course, I get from a newspaper channel, ANI. He declared on 24th November, no one can stop India from rewriting its history. Please note the word, with pride, to remove past distortions. This is a you can see this. Akbar's no great sheikhs, bro. Not happening. Unfriend him. Rana Pratap's more with it. With Var, like, really jamming cool. So, it's just telling you, here, sorry?
Department of Rewritten History.
Yeah, Department of Rewritten History, right. So the Prime Minister has spoken of concocted narratives and says there was the mighty Mughal Sultanate, mighty, nothing about anything mighty about it, blinded by religious fanaticism. On the other hand, there were our gurus, gleaming in the knowledge and living by the ancient principles of India. Elsewhere, he has spoken many times about 1,000 years of foreign rule, referring to Muslim rulers. Please match this with what is done in the textbooks, right? The textbooks, the major deletions for the medieval part are to do with the Mughal period and the Delhi Sultanate. That this negative portrayal, please note, I'm only pointing out 3 small points, that this is the reality. At that time, India in the beginning of the 18th century was producing 8 times the GDP of the UK. India was the largest exporter of textiles to the world, and of course we know it's a period of composite culture and advances in music, art, architecture and literature. But this reality doesn't come forward at all, which is there in the textbooks. This is removed. This negative thing is very important to note this. It's not where does this go back to? Where do the communal ideologues get their whole basis of history from? From British colonial ideologues. Professor Thapar points this out, so do others. 1,000 years of slavery, this idea again goes back to, you'll find it in 19th century writings, you'll find it in Mill, you'll find it in the book by Eliot and Dawson, and many others. So, when it came to race and religion, these were 2 areas where certainly the British colonial writings were very, put forward ideas which were very backward. And Aryan race theory, I'm not going into it here, but 2-nation theory, certainly you will recognize that today, of course, this is a cartoon which you have here on this, but today, the 2-nation theory, as we know, goes back to the British, the formation of the All India Muslim League and the push towards partition. History is used to legitimize India becoming a Hindu Rashtra, a Hindu state. So you can see here in this, you have the rewriting history of India, BJP, how it's picked up, you have this new India, the whole bulldozer vision, which is reflected very much in the politics also, as we know, the terrible lynchings and all that which follows along with it. The ideological offensive is creating in the public mind, through relentless propaganda, a false nation of pride in a mythic past with which only Hindus are identified. And interestingly, the majority community is, in them there is victimhood and fear promoted. The idea that Muslims are, for example, outnumbering the Hindus, which is clearly ridiculous, but you will find it everywhere. Yeah, so this, of course, it's already been mentioned. The Prime Minister at a science, this was inaugurating a hospital. Somebody else had spoken about, I think Smita, about the Science Congress. He says, we worship Lord Ganesha. There must have been some plastic surgeon who got an elephant's body on the head of a human being and began the practice of plastic surgery. This is impossible. The head of country, the Prime Minister saying this, and nobody called him out. Those people who were sitting there were all doctors and the who's who of Bombay. But it's really quite amazing. I'll just end with this. Maybe some of you would agree that assault on history or challenges to our secular historiography cannot be met only by taking secular history to the public domain, which is what we all are doing in our own ways. But vicious communal propaganda, we know, gets a big push when communal regimes come to power. So it's very important, the agenda of politically defeating communal organizations, especially at the ballot box, however difficult it is. I'll just leave you with this image. It brings in everybody from the Bharat Mata and Savarkar and the Home Minister. So everything is all just nicely encapsulated this. A little disturbing, but thank you so much, friends.